Alright, everyone. It is I, the Masked Ranger. Welcome back to the journey of a lifetime with Chapter 3, Bad Beginnings. Now, in the last part, stuff happened. If you haven't seen my video on Chapter 2, I highly recommend that you do. But basically, Plucky and Dash have left White Deer Park in order to look for Jinx. And, to discover more about her. So, without further ado, let's read this story. Just close my door. And off we go. Chapter 3, Bad Beginnings. Is this going to be a flashback chapter for Jinx? Once again, a clear sky of azure ruled, while the sun was setting over the land, casting its usual orange radiance across it. Far away from White Deer Park, the young red vixen Jinx was traveling free and alone. She was used to being alone, and she knew very well how to look after herself, despite her young age. However, her recent encounter with Plucky had made her start to question the way she was living her life. He was different from all the other foxes she'd met. Kind, funny, playful, and handsome. She wished she could have stayed to get to know him better, but she couldn't burden her past. She couldn't burden her past and her problems on anyone else. It was the reason she was always alone. Sorry for repeating that. I was just, double check. I'll try not to repeat so many, sentences, and also try not to get them wrong on the first time. She had spotted a group of field mice she was now stalking along the edge of a wheat field. Jinx reckoned she could catch at least 3 of them before they ran. She was a skilled hunter, and that would keep her sustained for at least a couple of days. She prowled slowly and low to the ground, using the wheat stalks as cover. The unsuspecting mice had no idea what preyed upon them until it was too late. Jinx had pounced, and just as she predicted, caught 3 of them. Further away but closing on her fast was Plucky and Dash. They were excited about adventuring into the real world, though nothing felt much different than as it was in the park. There was field after field, fence after fence, and a few country roads they had come across so far. Nothing dangerous, and nothing alarming. They then reached the wheat field which Jinx was in, and Plucky stopped to examine the surroundings, Dash alongside him. He could see a fox in the distance, and even though... Had a little yawn. And even though he'd met her only once before, he could recognize that scarlet fur coat anywhere. "Is that her?" Dash asked Plucky, who too had noticed a figure in the distance. "Yeah, that's her," Plucky replied with a smile. "So, what's the plan?" I hadn't really thought about it. Plucky paused. "Play it slow and play it cool, I suppose." "What does temperature have to do with it?" Dash asked, confused. "No, Dash, it's a figure of... Oh, never mind. Come on." Plucky moved onwards and gestured for Dash to follow. He and Dash slowly walked down the edge of the wheat field, approaching Jinx at a slow pace. Her back was turned as she devoured her recent kill. That was until she heard his footsteps behind her. sound of footsteps. The vixen stood and turned around in a defensive pose, releasing a feral snarl, but then stopped when she realized it was Plucky. "Plucky?" Jinx asked, confused. "What are you doing here?" "I left the park to explore the real world. And I figured traveling with you was a good idea, because you definitely seem to know your stuff," he replied with a smile. Jinx was flattered and smiled back. "Thanks, but I'm used to being alone." "You never know, you might like the company." Plucky spoke persuasively. "I suppose it'll be okay, as long as you don't slow me down." "Slow you down? We'd only speed you up," Plucky boasted. "By the way, Jinx, this is Dash. And Dash, this is Jinx." "Hey," Dash said a little nervously. "Hi. Plucky told me about you. I hear you're quite a runner." "Yeah, I'm the fastest," Dash replied, immediately losing her nervousness. "We should have a race sometime," Jinx replied with a smile, and then turned to Plucky. "Hey, I just caught some mice. You hungry?" "Starved, actually. I just remembered I haven't eaten since yesterday," Plucky declared. He then looked at Dash. "You're okay, though, aren't you?" "There's a whole wheat field over there. I think I'll be fine," Dash replied with a laugh. Plucky graciously accepted Jinx's offer to share her catch, and ate up the mice while Dash tucked into some wheat from the field. It didn't take long for their meal to be over, but once the trio had finished, the sun had just disappeared below the horizon. They continued onwards for a while, until they found some shelter for the night, and rested their weary heads. The two foxes and the hare continued on their adventure for a number of days, and now they were far away from White Deer Park. They never stayed in one place too long. They had passed through farmland, grassland, crossed streams, woods and copse after copse, and bypassing several towns instead of going through them. The trio, while they were getting along really well with each other, had mixed emotions about this whole adventure. Plucky was happy. He was traveling with his best friend and the vixen he loved, and was very grateful for them both getting along. However, he couldn't help but think how he would ask Jinx to come back to the park and stay with him as his mate. Nor could he stop thinking of how far they were from home and where they were going. What was worrying him most was how mad Fox was going to be with his disappearance, and the repercussions of him abandoning everyone else at home. It's not like he said goodbye to everyone either, and it made him feel guilty, as well as dragging Dash into it too, even though she insisted on coming with him. And then there's the matter of the gray foxes. Dash was feeling similar to Plucky, guilty that she had left the park without saying goodbye to anyone in particular. But she was glad she was with Plucky. As long as they were together, she was always happy, and she had always wanted to explore outside White Deer Park, so she was feeling confident on the journey. However, although Dash liked Jinx, she was starting to get annoyed at her. Whether she was doing it on purpose or had no idea. Dash felt like she was leading Plucky on, and therefore she was getting a little annoyed at Plucky for not realizing it. Jinx, however, was having very conflicted emotions. It was nice having the company. She had been on her own for a very long time, and wasn't used to it, and couldn't help being emotionally distant. At times she would get annoyed at them as their presence was affecting her loner instincts. Often she just stayed quiet, and only spoke when Plucky or Dash spoke to her, and she changed the subject whenever Plucky started asking questions about her. She felt guilty too that she had dragged Plucky and Dash far away from their home, and although she liked them, she had to get rid of them. She was still a hunted vixen by her old fox troop, and as long as Plucky and Dash was with her, they were in danger too, and she knew sooner or later her past would catch up with her. Caesar was relentless, and she couldn't run forever. 4 days into their adventure together, she saw her opportunity to carry on alone again, when her patience snapped while she and Plucky was out hunting. A small blunder made by him had caused them both to go hungry for the night when Plucky had pounced too late, while Jinx was chasing a group of voles towards him. The now fighting pair returned hungry and empty-handed to the copse they were sheltering in for the night, where Dash was waiting for them. It's gonna be another argument. Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. What happened? Dash asked, looking at the frowns on both their faces and their lowered ears. Ask him, Jinx replied harshly. The pair both lied down on the grass with some distance between them. Plucky then explained the short version of his blunder to Dash, who sympathized with them both. Well, you win some and lose some, I suppose, Dash said to try and calm them both down, but to no avail. Or you don't win any in his case, Jinx muttered spitefully. Well, it's not like you was trying to catch them, Plucky responded. No, because that was your job. Way to screw it up, genius. Hey, I'm only trying to help, Plucky snapped, raising his voice. Who asked for your help? I don't need it and I don't want it. Especially hers too. Jinx shouted and referred to the hare sitting next to Plucky. Leave Dash out of it. She hasn't done anything wrong, Plucky countered, standing up for Dash, who was insulted by the vixen's outburst. No, she hasn't done anything at all. What is your problem with us? And if we've been such an inconvenience to you, then why wait till now to say it? Huh? Plucky shouted and stood up. That's not what I'm saying. It's pretty much what you're saying, or is it just that my charm's worn off? Plucky finished with a snide smile, waiting for an answer. You... Jinx paused, and also stood up. You know what you are! You're just a pompous little country fox who's never had to fend for himself a day in his life. I bet you wouldn't even last 2 seconds in a fight. She turned and began to walk off. Plucky just stood there, shocked and offended that she would just blindly insult him like that. Dash was also just sitting there, shocked that her two companions had just turned on each other so cruelly. But it wasn't about to get any better. Jinx had almost completely walked off before Plucky responded. I could last longer than you. Jinx stopped in her tracks and immediately turned back around to face Plucky before asking, Is that a challenge? That's not what I'm saying. Oh, it's pretty much what you're saying, Jinx said sarcastically. Plucky paused for a moment while he and Jinx stared at each other defiantly. Fine. You want to fight me? Then let's fight. Plucky reluctantly but convincingly agreed. Fine. Jinx also agreed forcefully. Dash, dismayed about what was going on and what was about to happen, pulled Plucky aside to talk without Jinx overhearing them. Plucky, you don't have to do this, Dash pleaded with her friend. Hey, no one insults me or my friend and gets away with it. But you like her, remember? You shouldn't be fighting. To be honest, I'm not so sure about that anymore. Plus, she's the one way out of line here, so if she wants to fight, then she'll get one. Okay, just be careful, please, Dash said reluctantly and sighed, knowing there was no point in changing his mind. You know me, of course I will, Plucky replied arrogantly. I do know you. That's why I'm worrying. Then stop worrying. Plucky smiled at Dash and then turned to face Jinx, the smile disappearing instantly. He walked over closer to her, and into the makeshift arena of the edge of the copse. So, shall we agree to no teeth or claws? I wouldn't want to put another scratch on your pretty face, Plucky said mockingly, referring to the scar on Jinx's left cheek. Fine. Winner is whoever pins the other, but trust me, you wouldn't anyway. Jinx replied cockily, but was also furious with Plucky's last remark. The two foxes circled and growled at each other in the arena under the light of the moon and stars, while Dash watched anxiously. It began when Jinx lunged at Plucky's side, knocking him right over. It came as quite a shock to Plucky that Jinx was as strong as she was, but he immediately rolled over and was back up on his feet when she lunged again. This time he was facing her head on and knocked her to his left, standing on his hind legs. Jinx had landed on her feet, though, and wasted no time in grasping at Plucky's neck and dragged him to the ground. She attempted to finish it there and then, but Plucky kicked her away with his back legs. Jinx winced from the shock and fell on her side, but she quickly got back up, as did Plucky, and he charged at her. The two foxes then engaged in a lengthy grapple, standing on their rear legs, and beating each other with their front. Plucky was beginning to overpower Jinx until, in an attempt to knock him down, she cheated and scratched at his right shoulder with her claws. They were definitely sharp enough to draw his blood, and he fell back in shock. Gah! Plucky cried out. We agreed no claws! Oh, a little blood never hurt anyone! Plucky was infuriated she would try to cheat and leaped at her in rage. Jinx was not expecting such a move from him and she fell flat on her back. Plucky then attempted to dive at her again, his claws drawn, but Jinx had rolled to her left, causing him to miss, but he still caught her left front leg. She yelped from the sudden pain and escaped, regretting her earlier attempt to cheat. It didn't stop her from continuing, though, and summoning all her strength, she dived into Plucky, knocking him on his back, and she wasted no time in pinning him down. Well, I guess I win, Jinx said smugly. Really now? Plucky replied sardonically, before overwhelming Jinx, who would let her guard down. Plucky rolled right over, pushing Jinx off him, and then leapt on top of her, and pinned her paws and neck down with his front legs. Because I thought it was the one who pinned the other who won, Plucky continued, now being the smug one. Let me go! Jinx growled, as she struggled to break free from Plucky's grip. Say I've won, then. You win, Jinx said, defeated. Thank you, Plucky responded, loosening his grip and standing up, allowing Jinx to get up herself. I think you'll also find that was longer than 2 seconds. Jinx just frowned at him before speaking. Pfft. Still doesn't change anything. Jinx then stormed off out of the copse away from Plucky, who just watched her disappear into the night. Dash then came to stand next to her friend, as Plucky sat down on the soft blades of grass. I don't think she's coming back, Plucky sadly remarked to Dash. As mad as Plucky was at the vixen, he still liked her. Hey, if she doesn't want us around, then it's her loss. Dash tried to comfort him. She then noticed the bleeding from his shoulder. You're hurt! It's just a scratch. I'll be fine, Plucky reassured his friend. So, what do we do now? Go home? I guess. Plucky looked down, disappointed. What's wrong? She's right, you know. I haven't had to fend for myself or, survive. Plucky looked up and noticed the orange glow of streetlights from a town in the distance. He narrowed his eyes, and a look of determination swept across his face. You know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Dash continued to comfort the fox, unaware what he was planning. That was until she realized the look on his face and what he was looking at. Oh no, Plucky, I know that look. You don't have to do anything to prove yourself to her. It's not to prove to her. It's to prove to myself. One night in that town and then we'll head home. Plucky! Dash moaned. Dash, it's gonna take us a few days to get back to White Deer Park anyway. Why not just take this one detour? Plucky paused, looking at Dash's unconvinced face. What's the worst that can happen? Did you really have to go and say that, Plucky? Did you really? It's like every time that Jeremy Clarkson says, how hard can it be? On Top Gear, whenever the next crazy thing that he's about to do happens when he was on Top Gear. Every time he says those words, it rarely works out for him, okay? Okay. I'm sorry for shouting like that, guys, but yeesh! That is a big way to tempt fate. Do you really want me to answer that? Dash replied sarcastically. I just literally answered that a second ago, Plucky. I'm gonna call him Pluck for a bit. Oh, come on, where's your sense of adventure gone? Plucky said, standing up, beginning to walk in the direction of the town. He then looked back at Dash, tilting and lowering his head and drooping his ears, as well as widening his eyes. It was Plucky's charm offensive, and it always worked on Dash. Damn it! You know I can't say no to that face. She got up to follow Plucky, who was now smiling, and she continued. Fine. But I'm just going to clarify that I don't think this is a good idea. Plucky couldn't help but smile back at Dash couldn't help but smile back at Plucky, and the fox and the hare departed in the direction of the town under the brightness of the silver moonlight. Okay. Actually, I'm quite surprised at how short the chapters here are compared to, Empathy. Not that I have anything wrong, that there's anything wrong with that, of course. Given how extremely long the chapters that Empathy were, I guess it's a nice change of pace to read a story with short chapters, eh? But, on to the next chapter, and until next weekend, next Saturday, Sunday, or next weekend, whenever I'm uploading this, I'm the Masked Ranger saying keep moving forward, never lose your smile, and remember the oath, always. See ya!